I saw the blood before I heard the scream. A red cloud exploded into the turquoise water, spreading like poison. People started yelling. Chairs overturned. Drinks splashed into the sand. It was chaos. And then I saw her. Thrashing. Fighting. Her arms slapping the water, her face twisted in a silent scream. I didn't think. I ran. The lifeguard was frozen. Some people pointed. A few filmed with their phones. But no one moved. Except me. I dove in, my sneakers still on, the salt water slamming into my eyes. The ocean pulled at me, currents trying to suck me under, but I forced myself forward, swimming harder than I ever had in my life. And then, there it was. The fin. Cutting through the surface, slicing the waves like a dagger. It was so much bigger than I expected. The shark turned. It was coming back for her. She looked at me, our eyes locking through the madness, and in that split second, I knew I couldn't let her die. I reached her just as the shark lunged. I shoved her out of the way with one arm and swung my other fist at the beast, connecting with the side of its snout. Pain shot up my arm. My hand went numb. The shark veered off, disoriented for just a moment, but that was enough. I grabbed her by the waist and kicked hard, pulling us both toward shore. Her blood was everywhere, staining the sea, drawing the creature back for another strike. I swam faster. I swam like my life and hers depended on it. Because it did. When we finally hit the shallows, people rushed in, dragging us onto the beach. I collapsed onto the hot sand, gasping for air, my whole body shaking. She lay next to me, bleeding, shivering, alive. I had no idea then that this moment, this bloody, terrifying, unbelievable moment, was the beginning of the rest of my life. Her name was Emily. And she was about to change everything. The ambulance wailed its arrival. Paramedics rushed toward us, their faces tight with urgency. I sat up dizzy, my chest heaving. My arms were covered in her blood. Her beautiful blonde hair was matted with sand and salt water. Her lips were blue. She was barely conscious. Stay with me, I croaked, grabbing her hand. It was so small. So fragile. And right then, I promised myself I wouldn't let anything happen to her. Not now. Not ever. The paramedics shouted questions at me. Was she allergic to anything? Did I know her name? Was she breathing okay? I didn't have the answers. I barely knew anything about her. Just her name, Emily. And the way her eyes had looked when she realized someone was coming to save her. They loaded her onto a stretcher. I stumbled after them, refusing to let her out of my sight. You family? One of the EMTs barked. Boyfriend? No, I said, my voice cracking. But I'm going with her. The guy hesitated. Then he nodded. I jumped into the back of the ambulance, sitting at her side as they worked to stop the bleeding. Her thigh was torn up badly. Deep, jagged gashes that made my stomach churn. She needed surgery. Fast. As the sirens howled and we tore through the streets of Miami, she squeezed my hand weakly. I leaned closer. You're okay, I whispered. You're safe. Her lips moved, forming silent words I couldn't quite catch. But I knew. She was thanking me. At the hospital, everything blurred into a frenzy. Doctors shouting. Nurses running. A whirlwind of white coats and flashing lights. And then she was gone, whisked into the operating room, leaving me standing alone in the corridor, soaked, shivering, and absolutely terrified. I slumped into a plastic chair and buried my face in my hands. Who was she? Why had she been swimming alone that far out? And why did I already feel this insane, overwhelming need to protect her? Hours passed. I refused to leave. Refused to even get a coffee or change my wet clothes. Finally, a surgeon approached me, pulling off his mask. She's stable, he said. You saved her life. Those words hit me harder than any wave, any punch, any nightmare. I saved her life. But I had no idea she was about to save mine too. The first time I saw her awake, she looked so fragile it broke my heart. She was lying in a hospital bed, pale as paper, hooked up to a maze of tubes and monitors. But when her eyes fluttered open and she saw me, something lit up inside her. You. She whispered, voice hoarse. You saved me. I stood frozen, feeling a lump rise in my throat. How could a simple word, you, carry so much weight? I couldn't just stand there, I said quietly. She tried to smile. It was crooked and weak, but it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I'm Emily, she said. I know, I chuckled nervously. I'm Jake. Silence stretched between us, not awkward, but heavy with everything that had happened. Everything that still hung in the air, unspoken. Why, she asked after a moment, her voice cracking. Why would you risk your life for a stranger? I sat down beside her bed, leaning in so only she could hear. Because nobody else was going to, I said. Because you looked at me like you still wanted to fight. Like you weren't ready to die. Her eyes filled with tears. One slid down her cheek, and without thinking, I reached out and wiped it away with my thumb. Her skin was warm and soft under my hand. I should have pulled back. I should have remembered that I was just some guy who jumped into the water. But I didn't. And neither did she. Instead, she turned her face into my palm, closing her eyes, trusting me with a kind of innocence that made my chest ache. The nurse bustled in a second later, breaking the moment. "She needs rest," she said sharply, giving me the look only nurses can give, part grateful, part suspicious, part get the hell out. I stood reluctantly. "I'll be back, I promised." Emily's hand twitched toward me, trying to hold on. "I want you too," she whispered. That night, I lay awake in my cheap motel room, staring at the cracked ceiling, unable to stop thinking about her. Her laugh. Her tears. The way she clung to life, even when death had brushed so close. I knew I had just met her. I knew it was crazy. But I also knew this. Emily wasn't just some random girl I'd pulled from the water. She was the girl. And somehow, against all odds, she was already tangled up in my soul. The next morning, I showed up at the hospital before visiting hours even started. I grabbed a burnt coffee from the lobby machine and sat there, bouncing my knee, waiting like a damn schoolboy. When they finally let me in, I nearly sprinted to her room. Emily was awake, propped up by pillows, flipping through a magazine she clearly wasn't reading. Her face lit up when she saw me. "Jake," she breathed out like it was a prayer. I grinned. God, that smile of hers could level cities. I brought her a small stuffed shark from the gift shop. It was stupid, cheesy as hell, but it made her laugh, a real, full laugh that made the monitors beep faster. "Too soon?" I teased. "No," she said, cradling the toy. "It's perfect. We talked for hours. About nothing. About everything." She told me she was from Orlando, visiting Miami for a weekend getaway. She loved the beach but had no idea there were sharks this close to shore. "I guess I got a little too brave," she said, wincing as she adjusted her bandaged leg. "Brave?" I echoed. "Or stubborn?" She smirked. "Both." I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone in years. About my job fixing boat engines. About how I grew up bouncing around foster homes, never really belonging anywhere. About how I'd always felt more at home near the water, even when it was trying to kill me. She listened. Really listened. No judgment. No pity. Just those wide, sea-glass eyes soaking in every word. At one point, a nurse came in with pain meds and Emily grimaced as they adjusted her for. Without thinking, I reached out and took her hand. She squeezed it hard until the worst of the pain passed. When the nurse left, Emily didn't let go. "You know," she said softly, "most people would have walked away. Stayed safe on the beach." I shook my head. "I saw you," I said. "And it didn't feel like a choice." She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. "You're not getting rid of me that easy," I added, trying to lighten the mood. Her laugh was shaky but real. "Good," she whispered. The connection between us wasn't normal. It wasn't logical. It felt like we had known each other in another life, or maybe we were just making up for all the years we had been alone. Either way, it was real. It was alive. And it was only the beginning. Days blurred together. I became a permanent fixture at the hospital. The nurses started calling me the boyfriend, and neither Emily nor I bothered correcting them. Maybe because it didn't feel wrong. Every morning, I brought her coffee, black with 2 sugars, and every evening, we talked until her eyes got too heavy to stay open. We joked. We teased. We dreamed. It was like building a world, brick by brick, inside those 4 white hospital walls. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I fell for her. Hard. Like a man who didn't know how to fall gently. One evening, as the sunset painted the Miami skyline in golds and pinks, Emily turned serious. "Jake," she said, staring out the window, "you should know. I'm kind of a mess." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She bit her lip, something dark flickering behind her eyes. "I was supposed to be here with my fiancé," she whispered. "But he bailed on me. 2 days before the trip. Said he needed to find himself." My stomach twisted. "And you still came?" I asked, stunned. She shrugged, a brittle smile on her lips. "I needed to prove something. That I could be strong. Independent. That I didn't need anyone." Her voice cracked on the last word. I reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You don't need anyone," I said. "But maybe you deserve someone." She looked at me, then really looked, and for the first time I saw the raw hurt she'd been carrying under her brave smile. "You think that's you?" she whispered. I didn't hesitate. "I know it is." For a long moment, she just stared at me, searching my face like she was looking for a crack, a lie, anything fake. But there was nothing. Only the truth. Slowly, she reached out and took my hand, linking her fingers through mine. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice trembling. "So am I said. And it was true. I was terrified. Because somehow, this woman, this stranger from the ocean, had already carved her name into my heart. But fear didn't matter. What mattered was that we were in it together. That night, as she drifted off to sleep with her hands still tangled in mine, I made another promise to myself. I wasn't just going to save her once. I was going to keep saving her. Every damn day for the rest of our lives. Even if she didn't know it yet. 2 weeks later, they finally discharged her. I was there, of course, holding her crutches, carrying her bag, glaring at the orderly who almost bumped her wheelchair into a wall. Emily laughed at my overprotectiveness, but I could see the relief in her eyes too. I feel like I'm escaping prison, she joked as we stepped into the bright Miami sun. More like parole, I grinned. You're still on strict supervision. And you're my parole officer, she teased, bumping my hip with her elbow. Strict but fair, I said, helping her into my beat-up pickup truck. As I drove us toward the small rental apartment I'd lined up for her, a cozy little place by the beach, she stared out the window, quiet. You didn't have to do all this, she said softly. I wanted to, I answered. And I meant it. Every trip to IKEA, every pillow fluffed, every night spent worrying about whether she was comfortable, it all mattered. Because she mattered. Once we got her settled in, I made us a dinner of burnt grilled cheese and soggy tomato soup. Emily laughed so hard she almost fell off the couch. This is terrible, she said between giggles. I'm trying to impress you, I said, mock offended. Oh, you're impressing me, she said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. Later that night, we sat on the tiny balcony watching the waves roll in under the moonlight. Emily wrapped herself in a blanket, sipping the terrible coffee I'd made. Her leg was still heavily bandaged, and she moved stiffly, but her spirit. God, her spirit was stronger than ever. I thought about dying out there, she said suddenly, her voice so soft I barely heard her over the crash of the surf. I turned to look at her, my heart clenching. I thought no one would come, she continued. I thought that was it. I didn't say anything. I just reached over and slid my hand into hers. You came, she whispered. I squeezed her hand gently. I'll always come for you, I said. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. Instead, she leaned in, slow and uncertain like a bird testing if it's safe to land. Our lips met in a kiss that was soft at first, trembling, unsure. But then it deepened, became something fierce and hungry, like we were making up for every second we'd lost before finding each other. When we finally pulled apart, her forehead rested against mine. I'm scared, she whispered again. Me too, I said. But this time it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a beginning. A terrifying, beautiful beginning. And I wasn't going anywhere. Neither was she. The next few weeks were the happiest and the hardest of my life. Emily's recovery wasn't easy. The shark bites had left deep wounds both on her body and in her mind. She struggled with nightmares. Woke up screaming some nights, her body drenched in sweat, her hands clawing at the air like she was still fighting for her life. Every time I was there, holding her, whispering that she was safe, that I had her, that nothing was going to hurt her ever again. Some days she was strong, cracking jokes, teasing me about my terrible cooking, insisting on hobbling down to the beach even when she could barely stand. Other days she was broken, curling into herself, too exhausted and terrified to even get out of bed. I loved her through all of it. Without question. Without condition. We weren't officially together, not really. There hadn't been a big moment where we declared ourselves. It just was. Like gravity. Like breathing. One rainy afternoon, I found her sitting on the floor of the apartment, surrounded by scraps of paper. She was sketching something with a ballpoint pen, her brow furrowed in concentration. I sat down beside her. What's that? I asked. She smiled shyly and turned the paper toward me. It was a rough design of a small tattoo, a tiny shark fin breaking through waves with a heart hidden in the curls of the water. For survival, she said. For you. I stared at it, my chest tightening painfully. You want to get that? I asked. She nodded. I want to remember. I want to celebrate that I lived. That we lived. My voice caught in my throat. I'll get one too, I said impulsively. Her eyes widened. You would. In a heartbeat, I said. A few days later, we walked into a grimy little tattoo parlor on South Beach, laughing nervously. We sat side by side as the needles buzzed, permanently etching our survival onto our skin. Hers was just above her ankle, right next to the scars. Mine was on my chest, right over my heart. When it was over, we stumbled outside, high on adrenaline and pain and something else. Something wilder and deeper. Emily grabbed my hand and looked up at me, her eyes fierce and shining. I think I love you, she blurted out. I froze. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then I smiled. I know I love you, I said, and I kissed her, right there on the sidewalk. while the rain poured down around us like a baptism. We were scarred. We were scared. But we were alive. And somehow, incredibly, we were in love. Life after the hospital wasn't some fairy tale. It was messy, raw, beautiful chaos. Emily moved in with me a month after she got her cast off. We crammed into my tiny studio apartment above the boat shop where I worked. It wasn't much. Peeling paint, a fridge that made weird noises at night, a mattress on the floor, but it was ours. Some nights we stayed up talking until sunrise, making plans we had no real way of pulling off. Other nights we fought over stupid things, burnt dinner, laundry, who forgot to buy coffee. But even in the fights, there was this unshakable knowing. I wasn't going anywhere, and neither was she. One Saturday, while I was elbow-deep in a busted outboard motor, Emily showed up at the shop with a brown paper bag. She was grinning like she had a secret. "What's that?" I asked, wiping grease off my hands. She pulled out a stack of brochures, courses for marine biology, diving certifications, wildlife conservation programs. "I want to do something that matters," she said, practically vibrating with excitement. "I want to protect the ocean, the creatures in it." I stared at her, feeling like my chest might burst. "You almost died because of the ocean," I said. She shrugged, fearless. "Yeah, but it's still beautiful. It's still worth fighting for." God, she was something else. Braver than anyone I had ever met. We spent that afternoon sprawled out on the shop floor, making plans. Emily talking a million miles an hour, me mostly just staring at her and wondering how the hell I got so lucky. At one point, she caught me looking and laughed. "What?" she said, throwing a crumpled brochure at me. "Nothing," I said, grinning. "Just thinking about how I'm gonna marry you someday." The words slipped out before I could even think about them. She froze, her mouth slightly open. Shit. I waited for her to panic, to backpedal, to laugh it off. But instead, she smiled. Slow, bright, blinding. "I hope so," she said simply. No drama, no fear, just certainty. Like she already knew deep down that we were meant for this, for each other. And for the first time in my life, I knew it too, without a shadow of a doubt. I was going to marry the girl I pulled from the jaws of death. And somehow she was going to save me right back. The proposal wasn't some big, flashy thing. No flash mobs, no fancy restaurants. Just us. Just real, messy, honest love. It happened one night, sitting on the hood of my truck, eating greasy tacos from a food truck down by the pier. The ocean stretched out black and endless in front of us, and the salty air wrapped around us like an old friend. Emily was laughing, head thrown back, hair tangled from the wind, as she tried to wipe salsa off her shirt, and I just knew. I fished the little box out of my jacket pocket, heart pounding. "Hey," I said. She looked at me, smiling, oblivious, and then her eyes dropped to the box in my hand. Her mouth fell open, taco halfway to her lips, forgotten. "I don't have a speech," I blurted out. "I don't have anything fancy to say. Just, you're it for me, Em. You always were. From the second I saw you bleeding in that water. I think some part of me knew I was already yours." I cracked the box open. Inside was a simple silver ring. No diamonds, no big stone. Just a tiny engraving inside the band. "Always come for you." Her hands flew to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes. "Marry me," I said, my voice shaking. "Be my family. Be my everything." For a heartbeat, the world stood still. And then she nodded, so hard it looked like her head might fall off. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." I slid the ring onto her finger with trembling hands. She tackled me, tacos flying, laughing and crying all at once. We kissed under the stars, salty and sweet and tasting like forever. People around us clapped. Someone whistled. A drunk guy yelled, "Get a room." But I didn't hear any of it. All I heard was her heart beating against mine. All I knew was that somehow, against every odd, against every rule of logic, we had found each other. Me, a broken-down mechanic with more scars than dreams. Her, a survivor with fire in her veins and an ocean in her eyes. We were imperfect. We were battered. But together, we were invincible. And that night, sitting there on the hood of my rust bucket truck with salsa stains on our clothes and the future wide open in front of us, I realized something else. Happy endings weren't about perfection. They were about choosing each other again and again, every messy, beautiful day. And I knew deep in my bones that Emily and I would keep choosing each other for the rest of our lives. Planning the wedding was chaos. We didn't have money for a big fancy event. Hell, we barely had enough for rent most months. But none of that mattered. We wanted it simple. Real. Ours. We picked a small stretch of beach just outside Miami. A place where the sand was soft, the palm trees bowed low, and the ocean whispered promises we already understood. Emily wore a simple white sundress that fluttered in the breeze. She was barefoot, her golden hair wild around her shoulders. I wore my one good pair of jeans and a white button-down shirt that she insisted I tuck in even though I hated it. Our guest list was tiny, some friends from the boat shop, a few of Emily's college friends, the old nurse from the hospital who cried through the whole ceremony. There was no big aisle, no orchestra. Just Emily walking toward me, every step slow and deliberate, like she was carving her way straight into my soul. When she reached me, she slipped her hand into mine. It fit there like it had always been meant to. The officiant, a retired sea captain with a voice like gravel, kept it short and sweet. He asked if I promised to love and protect her, to chase away her nightmares, to stand by her through every storm. I do, I said without hesitation, my voice steady even as my heart hammered against my ribs. He asked Emily if she promised to love me, to trust me, to be my lighthouse when I lost my way. I do, she whispered, her voice breaking on the words. We exchanged rings, simple silver bands that gleamed in the sun, and when the captain said, "You may kiss your bride," I didn't wait. I pulled her into my arms and kissed her like it was the last thing I'd ever do. Like it was the only thing that mattered. Cheers exploded around us. Someone popped a bottle of cheap champagne. The salty wind tangled in our hair, the ocean roared behind us, and in that moment, it felt like the entire universe had bent itself to celebrate our love. Later, as the sun dipped low and the sky bled into 100 shades of orange and pink, Emily leaned her head against my shoulder. "We made it," she whispered. "Yeah," I said, kissing the top of her head. "We really did." She reached down and traced her fingers over the tiny shark fin tattoo on her ankle, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Funny," she said. "That something so terrifying led to something so beautiful." I squeezed her closer. "Maybe that's how all the best things happen," I said. "You survive the worst and then you find the best waiting for you on the other side." She tilted her face up to mine, her eyes glowing with unshed tears and too much love to hold inside. "I love you, Jake," she said. "I love you, Emily." And right there, under the bruised, bleeding sky, we made another silent promise, one we didn't need to speak aloud. Whatever came next. Whatever storms, whatever monsters, whatever darkness waited out there. We would face it together. Always. Married life hit us like a wave. Not the gentle kind that kisses your ankles. The kind that knocks you flat, tumbles you over, leaves you gasping for air and laughing all at once. We barely had a plan. Barely had a penny to our names. But we had each other, and somehow that felt like enough. Mornings smelled like burnt toast and cheap coffee. Nights were spent tangled together on our sagging mattress, whispering dreams into the dark. We fought sometimes, God, did we fight? About bills. About work schedules. About who forgot to buy toilet paper. But every fight ended the same way. Me pulling her into my arms, her burying her face in my chest, both of us mumbling apologies against each other's skin. Because when you've seen death up close, you don't waste time staying angry. Life's too damn short. Emily started her marine biology classes, part-time at first. She'd come home bubbling over with stories about coral reefs and sea turtles, her eyes shining like they used to when she talked about surviving. I picked up extra shifts at the shop to keep us afloat. Late nights, grease under my fingernails, hands raw from work. Some days, it felt like we were barely scraping by. Like the whole world was perched on our thin, shaky shoulders. But then I'd come home and find Emily waiting for me. Messy hair, paint-smeared cheeks, arms wide open, and suddenly none of it mattered. We had everything. One night, after a particularly brutal day where nothing seemed to go right, I found her sitting on the beach, knees hugged to her chest, staring out at the black water. I dropped down beside her, not saying anything. For a long time, we just sat there, listening to the waves breathe in and out. Finally, she spoke. "Sometimes I still hear it," she said. "The water, the screaming, the teeth." I swallowed hard, reaching out to take her hand. "It's okay," I said. "It's part of you now, part of us." She leaned her head against my shoulder, her voice barely a whisper. I'm scared it'll never go away. It might not, I said honestly. But it doesn't have to. We'll carry it. Together. She turned to look at me, eyes wide and wet with tears. Promise. I kissed her forehead, lingering there, breathing her in. Promise. And sitting there under the stars, with the ocean that had almost stolen her life lapping at our feet, I realized something else. The strongest people aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who break and still choose to keep loving anyway. And God, did I love her? Broken pieces and all. Time moved strangely after that. Some days dragged, heavy and slow, thick with worries about rent and groceries and busted car engines. Other days flew by so fast I swear I blinked and they were gone. But through it all, Emily and I kept building our life, one shaky brick at a time. She graduated from her first round of marine biology courses with honors. I swear, I was prouder at her graduation than if I had won the lottery. She wore this stupidly oversized cap that kept slipping over her eyes, and when she got her certificate, she ran into my arms, laughing and crying all at once. I'm doing it, she whispered against my chest. I'm really doing it. You always were, I said. You just needed to see it. We celebrated with greasy pizza and cheap beer on the beach, barefoot and tipsy, dancing under the stars like a couple of idiots. I remember thinking, if this is it, if this is all we ever get, I'm good. I'm so damn good. But life wasn't done with us yet. A few months later, Emily got offered a position on a marine conservation team, traveling up and down the Florida coast, rescuing injured wildlife, protecting coral reefs. It was her dream, everything she had fought for, clawed her way back to life for, and it scared the absolute hell out of me. Not because I didn't want her to go, but because deep down, a part of me still remembered that bloody water, still remembered how close I came to losing her. What if something happens? I asked one night, lying beside her in the dark, my hand resting on the small of her back. She rolled over, her eyes serious in the moonlight. Something could happen, she said. But I can't live in fear, Jake. You taught me that. I swallowed hard, brushing her hair back from her face. I don't want to lose you. You won't, she said fiercely, pressing my hand against her heart. You're part of me now, no matter where I go. I kissed her then, hard and desperate and full of every unspoken fear I didn't know how to voice. And when the time came, I stood on the dock, waving like an idiot as she sailed away on a battered research boat, her shark fin tattoo flashing as she blew me a kiss. I didn't cry, not until she was out of sight. And even then, I wasn't crying because I was scared. I was crying because I had never been so damn proud of anyone in my entire life. My girl, the one who survived, the one who chose to live, wildly, fiercely, without fear. And even though my arms ached to hold her, my heart was steady, because loving her meant letting her be exactly who she was meant to be, even if that meant letting her fly. The weeks without her stretched long and lonely. I threw myself into work, fixing boat engines, patching hulls, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind off the hole she left behind. At night, I'd sit on our balcony, beer in hand, staring out at the black stretch of ocean where she was somewhere out there, chasing her dreams. Sometimes she called, her voice crackly and thin through bad satellite service. She told me about rescuing a tangled dolphin off the Keys, about diving down to plant coral gardens, her body weightless and free under the water, about laughing with her crew late into the night, salt and wind tangled in her hair. Every word made me ache with missing her and swell with pride. You'd love it here, Jake, she said once, her voice dancing with excitement. The sunsets are insane, like, the sky's on fire. Save me a sunset, I said, half joking, half desperate. Always, she whispered. But distance has a way of sneaking between even the strongest bonds. The calls got shorter. The missed messages piled up. I told myself she was busy, that she was living her dream. And I was proud. God, was I proud. But I was also scared, because I knew how easy it was to get lost out there. How easy it was for life to pull you away from the people you love. One night, after her third missed call in a row, I sat on the beach, digging my toes into the sand, the cheap wedding band on my finger feeling heavier than usual. I thought about the day I pulled her from the shark-infested water. About the promises we made. About the life we were supposed to build. And for the first time, doubt crept in like a cold tide. What if love wasn't enough? What if wanting someone, needing someone, wasn't enough to hold them close? I hated myself for thinking it. Hated the way fear tasted in my mouth, bitter and sharp. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I drove 3 hours south to a marina where her ship was scheduled to dock for supplies. I didn't even think about it, I just went. When I got there, salt-crusted and sleep-deprived, I spotted her instantly. Standing at the rail, laughing with her crewmates, sunburned and wild and more beautiful than I remembered. For a second, I just watched her, my heart breaking and healing all at once. And then she turned and saw me. Her whole face lit up. She bolted down the gangplank and threw herself into my arms so hard I almost staggered back. "Jake," she cried, clutching me like she was scared I might vanish. I buried my face in her hair, breathing her in, holding her so tight it hurt. "I missed you," she whispered into my neck. "I missed you more," I said, my voice raw. For a long moment, we just stood there, tangled up in each other, the world spinning around us. And right then, I knew. It wasn't distance that broke people apart. It was forgetting what they were fighting for. And Emily and I? We remembered. Always. We spent the whole day together, like two kids ditching school. Emily showed me around the ship, tiny bunks, cluttered galley, salt-streaked windows that rattled with every wave. She introduced me to her crew, a ragtag bunch of sunburned misfits who welcomed me with wide grins and slaps on the back. I saw the way they looked at her, with respect, with awe, and pride surged through me like a tide. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. We grabbed greasy burgers from a food truck at the dock and sat cross-legged on the beach, talking and laughing like no time had passed. But somewhere under the easy banter, tension simmered. I could feel it in the way Emily's smile faltered when she thought I wasn't looking. The way her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her t-shirt, twisting and untwisting the fabric. Finally, as the sun started to dip low, staining the water blood red, she spoke. "I got offered a full-time position," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Permanent crew. Not just the coast. Longer trips. Maybe international." My stomach twisted. "That's amazing," I said, forcing a smile. Her eyes darted to mine, searching. "It's what I've always wanted," she said softly. "You know that." "I know," I said, my throat tight. "And you should take it. You have to." She stared at me, her eyes shimmering. "But it means being gone for months at a time," she whispered. "Maybe longer." The words hung between us, heavy as anchors. I looked at her, this fierce, stubborn, breathtaking woman, and realized the truth. I didn't want to hold her back. I couldn't. Loving Emily meant letting her be free even if it broke my own heart. I reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I'll wait for you," I said. A tear slipped down her cheek. "You shouldn't have to." "I want to." "Jake?" "No," I said, pulling her closer. "Listen to me. I didn't dive into that ocean to save a woman who'd live her life half full. You go. You chase every damn dream. And when you come back, I'll be here." She threw her arms around me, sobbing against my chest. "I love you," she choked out. "I love you more," I whispered into her hair. That night, we lay curled together on the sand, wrapped in a single thin blanket, the stars blazing cold and bright above us. I memorized the weight of her in my arms, the scent of her skin, the sound of her breathing, because I knew it might have to last me a long, long time. And even though my heart cracked with the weight of it, I wasn't afraid. Because when you love someone the way I loved Emily, you set them free. And you trust that somehow, someway, love will always find its way home. The day she left for the new expedition, it felt like my chest was being ripped in two. I drove her to the port in silence, our hands locked together over the gearshift like we could somehow hold each other tighter than the clock ticking down. The ship loomed massive against the pier, flags snapping in the wind. It wasn't some battered research boat anymore, it was a real vessel bound for waters far beyond anything we had ever touched. We sat in the truck for a long time, not moving. Finally, Emily turned to me, her face pale but determined. "Jake," she said, voice shaking. "I need to know you're okay with this." I looked at her, at the girl who had once been so broken and scared and now sat before me, strong and burning with purpose. "I'm not okay," I said honestly. "I'm gonna miss you so much it'll hurt to breathe." Tears welled in her eyes. "But I'm proud of you," I added. "And I love you enough to let you go." She leaned across the seat and kissed me, slow, desperate, full of all the things we didn't have words for. When we finally broke apart, she pressed something small and cold into my hand. I looked down. It was a key. Attached to it was a worn leather tag, hand-stitched with two words, "Our home." Tears blurred my vision. I'm coming back to you, she said fiercely. Always. I swallowed hard and nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. We climbed out of the truck and I helped her haul her duffel onto her shoulder. The final call blared over the speakers. She turned one last time, silhouetted against the sun, her hair whipping around her face. I love you, she called out. I love you more, I shouted back, my voice cracking. And then she was gone, walking up the gangplank, disappearing into the belly of the ship. I stood there long after the ship pulled away, the key clutched so tight in my fist that it bit into my skin. The ocean stretched wide and merciless in front of me, swallowing the tiny white speck of her ship until it was just sky and water and silence. I stayed until the stars blinked awake, my heart a raw, bleeding thing in my chest. And even though the loneliness hit me like a sucker punch, I wasn't sorry. Because real love, the kind that saves you, the kind that lasts, isn't about chaining someone to you. It's about standing on the shore, waving goodbye. And trusting they'll find their way back home. The days without her crawled by like wounded animals. I kept busy, fixing boats, patching sails, sanding down old wood until my fingers bled. But nothing filled the emptiness. Nights were the worst. The apartment felt haunted without her laugh bouncing off the walls. Without her socks abandoned in weird places. Without the way she used to steal all the covers and then accuse me of hogging the bed. I slept with her pillow hugged against my chest, breathing in the fading scent of her shampoo, pretending I wasn't counting the days. Weeks turned into months. We messaged when she had signaled quick, breathless notes about sea turtles, coral reefs, giant waves that almost capsized their boat. Sometimes a blurry photo of her grinning into the sun, wind-chapped and radiant. But there were long stretches of silence too. Times when the ocean swallowed her whole and all I could do was wait. People asked if it was worth it. Doesn't it kill you? My buddy Chris asked one night, tossing back a beer. Waiting around? Not knowing if she'll even come back. I smiled, slow and steady. It's not even a question, I said. I'd wait forever if I had to. Because when you find a love like that, a love that grabs you by the soul and shakes you alive, you don't let go. You fight. You wait. You believe. Even when the world tries to break you. Especially then. One night, about 7 months after she left, I was closing up the shop when I heard it. A car door slamming. Footsteps running across the gravel. I turned, heart hammering in my chest. And there she was. Emily. Alive. Home. Her hair was longer, wild and sun-bleached. Her skin was darker, freckled from endless days under the sun. She looked thinner, tougher, stronger. And more beautiful than I had ever seen her. She dropped her bag on the ground and launched herself at me, sobbing and laughing all at once. I caught her midair, spinning her around, clutching her so tight I was afraid I might hurt her. You came back, I choked out. Of course I did, she cried, pressing frantic kisses all over my face. I promised. I promised I'd always come home to you. I buried my face in her neck, breathing her in, feeling my soul stitch itself back together piece by piece. I missed you, I whispered. I missed you more, she said, laughing through her tears. And right there, standing under the battered neon sign of the boat shop, surrounded by the smell of salt and oil and home, I realized something. We weren't the same people we had been when she left. We were stronger. Sharper. Forged by distance and time and the kind of love that doesn't fade when you're apart, it grows. We didn't just survive. We thrived. Together. Always. We didn't waste a second. After the tears, after the 1,000 kisses, after the whispered I missed yous, we loaded up my truck and drove straight to the beach. The same beach where it had all started. The moon hung low and heavy over the water, casting silver trails across the black waves. The air smelled like salt and new beginnings. We sat on the tailgate, barefoot, her head tucked under my chin, our hands twined together like roots too tangled to separate. Tell me everything, I said. She did. About the storms that almost tore the boat apart. About the dolphins that swam alongside them for miles like ghosts. About nights spent staring up at unfamiliar stars, wondering if I was looking at the same sky. You were always with me, she whispered. Everywhere I went. In every sunrise, every wave, every heartbeat. I kissed the top of her head, too overwhelmed to speak. After a while, she pulled back, her eyes glowing with something fierce and wild. I don't want to leave again, she said. Not without you. My heart stuttered. You mean? She nodded, a slow, shaky smile spreading across her face. I got offered a spot on a new project. Still conservation work, but it's based here. Local dives. Outreach programs. We can build something together, Jake. Here. Now. Tears blurred my vision. Are you sure? I croaked. She cupped my face in her hands, her touch steady and sure. I don't want adventure without you, she said. I don't want a life that doesn't have you at the center of it. I grabbed her, pulling her into my lap, crushing her against me. "I'm in," I whispered against her hair. "I'm all the way in." She laughed, a sound so full of joy and relief it cracked the night wide open. We lay there for hours talking about the future. About opening a little dive shop together. About leading conservation tours, teaching people to love the ocean the way she did. About someday, maybe someday, building a family. Every dream, every plan, wrapped in the simple, unshakable truth. We were stronger together. Always had been. Always would be. As the first blush of dawn painted the horizon, Emily sat up and dug something out of her pocket. It was a small shell, worn smooth by time and tides, pale pink and perfect. She pressed it into my hand. "For saving me," she said. "And for letting me save myself." I closed my fingers around it, my chest aching with love so big it barely fit inside me. "You saved me too," I whispered. We kissed as the sun rose behind us, the world turning gold and new and endless. And for the first time in a long, long time, I knew. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living. Wildly. Bravely. Together. The next year unfolded like a dream, messy, exhausting, unbelievably beautiful. We opened our dive shop in a tiny cinder block building 2 streets back from the beach. Second Chances, we called it. A name that meant more than most people would ever understand. Our logo? A simple outline of a shark fin breaking through the waves, just like the tattoos inked into our skin and etched forever into our story. The shop was rough at first. Some days no one came. Other days the power cut out in the middle of a gear fitting. We argued. We cried. We celebrated every tiny victory like it was the Super Bowl. Emily threw herself into the conservation programs, teaching kids about marine life, organizing beach cleanups, fighting to protect the ocean that had once nearly taken her from me. I handled the boats, the bookings, the endless repairs that kept the place afloat. We lived off instant noodles and hope. And somehow it was enough. More than enough. We made a life, one sweaty, sunburned day at a time. We took groups out snorkeling, diving into the turquoise depths, showing them the magic hidden just below the surface. We taught people to respect the ocean, not fear it. We showed them that even the creatures we were taught to be afraid of, sharks, rays, eels, had their place, their purpose. Just like we did. Sometimes, late at night after the last boat was locked up and the tourists were gone, we'd sit on the beach and dream even bigger. One day Emily said, "I want to open a rescue center. For injured marine animals. A real sanctuary." "You will?" I said without hesitation. She smiled, that slow, fierce smile that still made my knees weak. "You'll build it with me?" "Until the wheels fall off," I promised. We weren't rich. We weren't perfect. But every day I woke up with her tangled in the sheets beside me, her hair a wild halo, her breathing steady and sure. Every day I saw her face light up when she talked about saving the world. I knew. This was it. This was happiness. Not the big, flashy kind they sell in movies. The real kind. Built from blood and sweat and stubborn love. The kind you fight for. The kind you choose over and over no matter how hard it gets. Emily and I had been through hell. Shark bites. Nightmares. Distance. Fear. But love, a real love, had carried us through it all. And it wasn't done yet. Not even close. One evening, about a year and a half after Emily came back, we closed the shop early. The sun was setting, bleeding orange and pink across the sky, and the air was thick with that heavy, salty sweetness that only comes right before summer storms. I spread a blanket out on the sand, popped open 2 cheap beers, and waited. Emily came barefoot, hair tied up, her face flushed from the day's heat. She dropped down beside me, stealing my beer without asking, grinning like she owned the whole damn world and me right along with it. "You're up to something," she said, squinting at me suspiciously. I shrugged, trying to play it cool. But my hands were sweaty. My heart hammered like a jackhammer inside my chest. "You're not good at secrets, Jake," she teased, nudging me with her knee. "Yeah, well," I said, fumbling in my pocket. "Maybe it's not a secret anymore." I pulled out a small velvet pouch and dropped it into her lap. She stared at it, then at me, her mouth falling open. Slowly, she untied the knot and tipped the contents into her hand. A necklace. Simple silver chain. Tiny pendant in the shape of a shark fin, and tucked behind it, engraved so small you had to squint, were the words, "Always find you." She covered her mouth with her hand, tears instantly welling in her eyes. I scooted closer, taking her trembling fingers in mine. "Emily," I said, voice shaking harder than I wanted to admit. "I don't care where you go, what dreams you chase, what storms you sail into. You'll always be my home. And I'll always find you. Every damn time." Tears slid down her cheeks as she threw her arms around me. "You're my home too," she whispered against my neck. "You're my everything." I fastened the necklace around her throat, my fingers brushing the warm skin there. And then we sat there, holding each other as the first fat drops of rain began to fall. We didn't move. Didn't run for cover. We just laughed, soaked and shivering and dizzy with love as the storm broke over us. Because we weren't afraid of storms anymore. Not when we had already survived the worst together. The rain plastered her hair to her face. Lightning cracked the sky wide open. The ocean roared. And still, she smiled at me like I was the only thing that mattered in the whole chaotic, beautiful, terrifying world. And I smiled back. Because no matter what came next, I knew we would face it side by side. Always. Years have passed now. More than I can believe when I look back. The shop's bigger, we bought the building next door and turned it into a small marine rescue center, just like Emily dreamed. We've got tanks full of baby sea turtles recovering from fishing nets. A rescued pelican named Mo who thinks he owns the place. Even a half-blind dolphin we're nursing back to health. Sometimes when the sun's low and the ocean's calm, I stand at the door, watching Emily move among the tanks, teaching kids about the creatures she loves so fiercely. Her face lit up, her hands flying as she tells them stories about survival, about second chances. And I feel this surge of pride so big it almost knocks me off my feet. We still fight. About stupid things. About who forgot to do laundry or whose turn it is to fix the damn leak in the roof. But the love underneath it, God, it's deep. Deeper than the ocean. Stronger than anything life can throw at us. Sometimes late at night, when the world's gone quiet, I lie awake and trace the scar on her thigh with my fingertips, the one left by the shark. A reminder of how close we came to losing everything. And every time I whisper a silent thank you into the dark. Thank you for the blood in the water. For the scream that cut through the chaos. For the terror that shoved me into the ocean without thinking. Because without it, without all of it, I never would have found her. My Emily. The bravest woman I've ever known. The woman who taught me that love isn't safe, isn't easy, isn't guaranteed. Love is a choice. A wild, reckless, breathtaking choice you make every damn day. And it's worth it. Every scar. Every fear. Every storm. If I had to do it all over again, if I had to dive headfirst into bloody water, fists swinging, heart pounding, terrified out of my mind, I would. 1,000 times over. Because she's not just the woman I saved. She's the woman who saved me. And together, we're unstoppable. Always have been. Always will be.